Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about mandolin chords and how they relate to chords on the guitar. I think as mandolin players, we want to make sure that we also know guitar chords so that we can play along with other musicians. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, like this video, and if you would like private lessons, come over to the Patreon. Thanks for watching. This is a G chord on the guitar, kind of a modern style with the D also added. Typically you may see that play like this. I'm so used to doing it, I can't kind of not do it. Alright. If we just look at the top four strings of the guitar, this is a G note, a B note, an open D, and an open G. So let's look at a mandolin really quickly. This is probably the first chord everyone learns on the mandolin, the open G string, open D string, B, and G. You should kind of see a relationship that I'm talking about here where the G chord on the mandolin is an inverted, almost completely inverted G chord on the guitar, right? So the position that we had was similar to this. We've just completely flipped over. You're actually using the same fingers to hit the same notes, right? So the G note and the B note, there's an exact 1-to-1 there. Now that's important because just as you would take a G chord on the guitar and you would move it down for C, you can do the same thing. If you notice that when you make this G chord on the guitar, it's very similar to when you make the C chord as well, right? So we can take this, actually it's a little bit of a cheater code, right? You can play a G and then a C like this, right? You just move that down. Actually, the full voicing would be like this. But if you notice, that pattern goes down. It's just these two here going down. Now, a traditional bluegrass mandolin player would tell you not to use this chord, right? They would say to use a chop chord, which means you would have a fifth up here, a D, then a G, then a B, then a G. But in my opinion, that's great for rhythmic bluegrass, right? So meaning the chop. That doesn't have a lot of tonal quality to it, and it shouldn't, because it's a drum in that particular genre of music. It is actively playing the backbeat, and the other instruments in the band are going to be responsible for playing or having the harmonic responsibility, right? For playing chords, the bass and the guitar, and the banjo with the syncopation, right? So your job as a mandolin player in a bluegrass band is a little bit different than, let's say, if you're playing with a folk instrument, right? Or a folk musician, songwriter, or something like that, right? So if you're playing with a songwriter, you're going to want to be able to follow chord changes, and you're going to want to be able to voice them in a way that doesn't sound closed off and kind of not harmonic, if that makes sense, right? So how chords are built on a piano is they have a root, and then the two harmonic notes, and then the root again, right? So you got your 1, 3, and 5, so that would be a G, a B, a D, and then a G again. Now, unfortunately, because of how the mandolin is tuned and how we go up in fifths, but we start on the G and we go up to E, that's kind of restrictive in our harmonic capabilities, right? But we can play a chord that encloses both harmonic notes inside of two roots, right? So you can have a G on this side and a G on that side. Those two notes are inverted, so your fifth is lower than your third, but it's still close enough. Now, if you wanted to play this in a bluegrass context, you're going to have to learn to mute with one of these fingers, right? If you're going to play Sam Bush style stuff, right? You've got to learn to palm mute or mute with your left hand, and that's a pretty advanced technique, but that's why a lot of times the bluegrass guys are just going to fall back into this chop chord, because it allows them to close position create a sharp backbeat, which is more important than the chord that's being played, right? If you want to be in time and keep the band around you in time, you don't want that backbeat to lag. And that's what happens a lot of times when people focus on what chord am I playing or whatever. It's like, you know, you really need this part to be in time. Right? For all that to work, everything has to stay in time, because especially playing at faster tempos, that's going to be pretty noticeable if you start to slow down. Now let's think about how to make a minor chord. Now for this example, I'm actually going to take this open G chord and I'm going to move it up to A. Now hopefully you can see what I'm doing here, but I'm actually taking those open strings and I'm moving them up. That one up 2 frets. That one up 2 frets, right? And then I keep this position the same with my ring and middle finger. What this does is it allows us to play a minor chord a lot easier, right? So we just take your middle finger, you move it back 1 fret. Now, if you're really paying attention here, something should jump out at you really, really, really fast. There's a C chord that we were playing just a minute ago in our A minor. This was like the first thing that kind of opened my mind to, okay, theory and understanding what's going on is not going to hinder what I hear and my ability to play things that I hear. It's actually going to help me describe what I hear and help me actually pull off some of those things. So that's why I focus so much on theory, is I started to see these shapes inside of shapes when I started to make this particular chord. Whereas if you're making this chop chord and you slide that C sharp back to a C, you're not necessarily seeing a C major inside of an A minor. So I really think that these types of chords, how I built them, were some of the first things that kind of made me check into, oh wait, what is going on here, right? And that's really modal music. A lot of this music is modal, and we just don't really realize it until we're, describe the sound and you hear it played, and you're like, oh, I've heard that before. So right? So the same thing that would apply to your A could then also apply to your D. They can also apply to your E. Let's say you take this D chord. Now this is like the beginner D chord everybody learns. That would be the 2nd fret on the G and the 2nd fret on the E, and everything else is open. It's really an inversion because you're starting on an A note and you're ending on an F sharp note, and there's only one D note involved. So it is an interesting positional chord that took me a long time to figure out what to do with. But really, I really use it more in an application of an E, right? So if we took this up a whole fret, I'm only playing the top 2 strings here. But what we've done is we've taken this open D, we've slid the A note up to a B, we've taken the open D note up to an E. Now, I have 2 options. I can play like the open D note. I can bar here. It sounds okay. Or, because this is technically like an E minor, right? This is also an E minor. Right now we haven't really expressed a 3rd. It's kind of hard to do so, unless you're in this position where it's like a C position up. So we're here. We can drop in a D note here on this A string. Ooh. And that just gives you so much more color. And all that is we've taken this open D, and let's say we added this C note here, right? And we just slid that up 2 frets, everything up 2 frets. So that's a cool voicing for a D minor as well. And then if you include you get a little 9 action with that E down there. But that chord has a lot less application than these major position chop chords. What ends up happening with major position chop chords is, in my opinion, they become bar chords, right? Like power chords on the guitar, right? So let's look at some bar chords on the guitar. G. The same as this bar chord moves up and down the chord, or a power chord just moves linearly, you can do the same thing with mandolin chords. So really you just need to understand how far each note is away from the next note that you're trying to find. We have 9-pound hammer in the key of G. Well, the 9-pound hammer is a little too heavy for my size. For my size. And someone says, let's play it in B flat. Well, we have to move that up 3 frets. But then my positioning really doesn't change from that point. I'm still going up a string. And then from there I go up 2 frets. So it kind of unlocks your ability to kind of play in any key once you start to use some of these positionings. The same thing applies to this other voicing that I was talking about here. A, da, 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 da. We need to play that in B. Right? So there's not limited to just one type of voicing, and once you start to see that everything is in this pattern to where if I have something in a root position, and I need to move that phrasing even to its harmony note of 4, right? So if you're in the key A, then we're going to 4, right? Back to A. D. A. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel and you like the video. Also, if you would like private lessons, please come over to the Patreon. I'm offering a lesson included in the subscription and also discounts on further lessons. So, yeah, let's start learning mandolin together.